it's also the only way that you can grow. Because if you don't, it's like you can automate, and that's really powerful, right? Automating like kind of quote unquote robots and that kind of stuff. But it only gets you so far. At some point, you have to bite that bullet. You have to figure that out, how to hire people, lead people, build a team around yourself. So the sooner you get started on that and just decide that you're going to learn that, the better. But at the end of the day, right, there is risk, like time, money, obviously. Like you as the CEO or you as the owner is the ultimate holder of that obligation. It's yours. So if you have an employee that was supposed to fulfill that obligation and that person quits, it falls back to you. Or it falls back to manager. But ultimately, it always falls back on you. That's part of what you get paid for, right? So in socialism, they like talking about how, you know, the profits are just like unfair extra money to the greedy capitalists and all that stuff. But nobody talks about all that extra work that the quote unquote evil capitalist puts in, or B, all the fucking losses, right? It's not like when the company loses money, like, all right, like, great, now let's take all that money from all the employees. No, actually, no, not that part. No, we only want the good part, right? So it's kind of funny how that works. We are now live with Unfiltered Live, the show for inner growth of entrepreneurship, anything inner growth, also marketing, strategy, all those things. But strategy and tactics are kind of easy once you figure out the inner growth piece. Once you sort out the inner growth, everything else aligns. So that is the thesis of the show. That is the topic of the show. Live here every Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern. If you're watching the replay, go to unfiltered.show to sign up to join the show live every Thursday. It's an amazing, fun community. So a big thing that's happened for me in the past week has been around hiring. So as business owners, we all need to hire other people. I used to hate this idea because like I'm the person who, I love studying, I love figuring stuff out, I love getting better at things. And I remember seeing this poster that was like, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with others, or something to that effect. And I was a little bit bummed about it. I was a little bit pissed because I was like, I don't really want it. Like, seriously, it's at one point I considered, should I just keep Simplero to where I could basically handle it myself, maybe with a few people helping with support or something like that, but like not try to grow it, just to avoid the headaches of building a team and hiring people and all of that stuff. And I will tell you, it's a headache. It is a headache. It just is. Finding people with the right people, and then vetting and onboarding, and then when they leave, and then like all the things that like they didn't put things in the right places. I still have a Facebook account that someone set up for us that I still can't get into. Like she set it up. She did like a 2-factor authentication thing, and she like never shared that information. I'm trying to get her to actually get me to access that account because it owns some Facebook pixels and others, so I just can't get to it. So there's no question that having a team is a headache. But it's also the only way that you can grow. Because if you don't, it's like you can automate, and that's really powerful, right? Automating like kind of quote unquote robots and that kind of stuff for sure. But it only gets you so far. At some point, you have to bite that bullet. You have to figure that out, how to hire people, lead people, build a team around yourself. So the sooner you get started on that and just decide that you're going to learn that, the better. So I hired an executive assistant who's a phenomenal person, but it's just not the right person for me, for what I need in this role. And I made the mistake of, I hired a firm to do the hiring for me because hiring takes a long time. And I made the mistake of not checking quite correctly how much they had done and what exact kind of vetting they'd done. I talked to this firm about like what exactly I needed and kind of trusted that they've done all that vetting. I didn't really double click on it and really dive into it. So I ended up like hiring this person who wasn't the right fit. We're on super good terms. She's still with me, and I'm helping her find the dream job for her. But we both agreed we weren't the right match there. So one of the things I did was I reached out to a friend of mine who told me about this executive assistant that he'd hired that he was like blown away with. She was just incredible. And one of the things he said to me was, like, I didn't onboard her. She onboarded me. Like, this assistant came in and basically, like, she had all the questions and processes. Like, okay, what are your goals? What are you trying to achieve? Like, what's taking up your time? She had this whole thing mapped out for him so that she just started immediately hitting the ground running and getting up to speed. And she'd worked for our shared mentors, this guy Devin and me and myself. Were both members of a coaching program, a mastermind from a guy named Dan Martell. He has a company called SaaS Academy, and they're really good at process, and they're very good at hiring. They're very good at training. They're very good at coaching and onboarding and all of those things. So he hired someone that had been an assistant to one of his members of Dan Martell's leadership team. And so I was like, if you can find an assistant that's worked for that company, like, that's gold. So I was like, okay, this wasn't working out for me. Let me talk to Devin's assistant and see what I could learn from her about, like, what to look for and why this was a mismatch, why I'd ended up in this place, and how I could make sure I didn't end up here again. And we talked, and she gave me this exercise that was really a game changer for me. The exercise was very simply to ask this question. If I woke up tomorrow morning and had the world's greatest executive assistant, what would my day look like? And how would I know that I had the best executive assistant in the world for me? This is not the first time that I've heard someone say that you need to write down your expectations and everything you want for this role. I've heard that before, and I've written that down. I've written down all my expectations for the roles and all the tasks and all the things they need to do and all of that stuff. But for some reason, this question, the way that was phrased, that unlocked something completely different in me. It unlocked a different answer in me. It was like, now I was telling a story rather than listing facts. And it was just like, wow, like this makes it so clear to me and to others what exactly I'm looking for. So now it's like, we can put that in front of the people who are hiring for me, as well as put that in front of a prospective candidate and just say, is this what you want, right? You want someone who is like, yes, I'm 1,000% in. This is exactly the role that I want. And if some people are like, nah, I'm not really sure. No, this is too much. And this is like, no, like, then you don't want them, right? I mean, they could be pretty much literally be the job description, right? That you put out there as the ad. So when you have that level of detail in that kind of narrative form, that becomes super powerful. And I realized through this process that in this hiring process, I'd actually played victim around that hiring, right? I hadn't been fully owning what I wanted. I hadn't been fully in charge of ensuring that I got what I wanted, right? That's the creator move. That's the ownership move, is like, this is exactly what I want, and I need to check and double check that my assumptions about the vetting that has been done are correct. Like, tell me exactly what process you've taken these people through. Like, what tests have you done with them? What interviews have you done? What have you assessed them on? And then even if they have assessed it, let me just make sure that I assess it as well, right? So the lesson for me was like really about the unlock of that particular question. And then the importance of really diving deep into the vetting. Another thing that happened in the hiring was that the firm I hired to do the hiring for me were like, yeah, you really, like, they're trying to make me have not too many interviews. So I did 2 interviews with this candidate. I had Beth on my team do an interview as well. So we did 3 interviews with her before. But I should have done more. I should have done more interviews. Should have done more digging. And I kind of let that slight pushback from them influence me to do fewer interviews. I'm not sure that would have helped either, because I wasn't, there's some growth that I hadn't taken then on this like kind of victim mindset around this hire. So it really changed things for me. And now what I've done is I've written down that same answer that same question for all the other roles that I'm currently hiring for, as well as for the recruiters that are helping me hire these roles, as well as for team members that are already on my team, where I'm now writing down in this format of like what exactly I'm looking for. So that was my recruiting story. Really crucial. And I'm looking to hire a head of marketing, or maybe even director of marketing, or even VP of marketing right now. And I'm talking to some really top level recruiters and other people to help me fill this role. This is a like $200,000 to $300,000 a year kind of position. It makes me think like, it's like, all right, if one of these recruiters can bring me a guy who's just like freaking awesome, am I able to, as a leader, like be a match to that person? Like that's a question that I'm honestly asking myself. Like, or more likely, like, how do I need to grow? In what way do I need to grow in order to be a match for the person that I really want in this role? But it's like I had this thing about recruiters and this hesitancy to use recruiters, and I've used recruiters in the past not successfully, and I think I'm changing my thinking around it. I'm like, I think I need for the kinds of like jobs that I'm needing, like hiring is just it's so challenging, and the really good people need to be poached from jobs they're already in, and it's a very specific skill set, and it's so important to get those right hires for a company like mine. So I'm definitely looking to I'm talking to 10 different recruiters right now, because I'm talking to some about the marketer hire, and I'm talking to others about hiring engineers. So definitely looking to go the recruiter route for those jobs. Bryson, you had some thoughts on something.
Absolutely, always have thoughts. So we were just talking about poaching people.
Yes, poaching.
That seems so unscrupulous. How do you do that without being with integrity? And like, what's that look like? And high stakes.
It's the game. It's just what it is, right? If you approach someone and you can make them an offer, and you're going to bring them into a situation where they're going to be happier than where they're currently at, that's how it is. There's nothing nefarious in it. There's nothing bad in it. Like, people are not married to their companies. Like, the companies are not married to the employees. Right? If the economy goes bad, like, the company's going to lay off people. Like, this is how the game is played, right? And again, like the best people are not looking for a job. The way that I used to hire engineers was that I would go, there's a website called stackoverflow.com where engineers go to find solutions to technical problems, and we all do it. When I was coding, I would end up on Stack Overflow at least once a week. And Stack Overflow would let me run an ad alongside that question answer part. So even someone who's not looking for a job would see that. And so if you run a job ad that has a pattern interrupt as like something unexpected, that just doesn't say like senior Rails engineer, it says something like, we put superhero something or other in there to get people to click on it and read it. Like, we got some really good people from that. But you can't do that anymore. They don't offer it anymore. So if you just run your ads on job boards, you're only going to get people who are looking for jobs. Sure, sometimes like good people, if you're a good engineer and you're like, this company, I don't know, like I'm not that happy here, like I'm a little worried about the future, or like I'm looking for something new, sure, you're going to go look. But generally, like most of the people that you're going to find there are the people who are not that great. And especially these days with the layoffs, right? The market is nowhere near as tight as it was a year ago, but the companies that are laying off all these engineers, they're not laying off their best engineers, right? So even though there's a lot more, talent in the market, it's like kind of the bottom of the barrel of talent in a lot of cases. And that was what we were seeing as well when we were running our engineering hiring pipeline, which was essentially the same that we did, a few years ago, where it worked really well. But what changed is we can't do the Stack Overflow thing anymore, and the market has changed, and it just wasn't giving us the results that we needed. Back in the day, it was actually, I don't know if you saw it, but like Steve Jobs and Eric Schmidt, Steve Jobs of Apple and Eric Schmidt at Google made a deal not to poach from each other. And that was actually, I think that was brought up to the courts in California as a lawsuit, because that's illegal. Because like now what that means is it actually suppresses the salaries, right? The labor market, right? So like people want to be poached, right? They want to be offered a better job. Yeah, for sure. Of course. Why not? Why wouldn't they?
I love it.
For the businesses, yeah, it sucks. Like it sucks when you lose your like someone like a talented person who has a lot of knowledge in their heads that has been built up, and you bring a new person on, and it takes a while to get them to get into the system and get up to that level. Yeah, it fucking hurts, but that's the game, right? That's what it is. I had someone like quit on me like with like an hour's notice, and it was like really difficult, but it is what it is. As an entrepreneur, this is what you sign up for, so better not complain about it. As an entrepreneur, right, there's a lot of risk in what you're doing. Like, I mean, it depends on how risky you play, but at the end of the day, right, there is risk, like time, money. Obviously every customer pays the money in exchange for something, right? There's an obligation there. Yes, you're paying that company, and the company now has an obligation to you to deliver something. That obligation is being held by some employee, by some system that you created or something, right? But at the end of the day, you as the CEO or you as the owner is the ultimate holder of that obligation. It's yours. So if you have an employee that was supposed to fulfill that obligation and that person quits, it falls back to you, or it falls back to manager. And then like ultimately it always falls back on you, right? At the end, you're the backstop. If everybody else fails, it falls back to you. That's part of what you get paid for, right? So in socialism, they like talking about how the profits are just like unfair extra money to the greedy capitalists and all that stuff. But nobody talks about, A, all that extra work that the quote unquote evil capitalist puts in, or B, all the fucking losses, right? It's not like when the company loses money, like, all right, like, great, now let's take all that money from all the employees. No, actually, no, not that part. No, we only want the good part, right? So it's kind of funny how that works.
That's so true, man. When the company is doing bad, it's like, or struggling, employees are asleep. Meanwhile, the owners are the ones who are dealing with the internal pain and like the stress of like, oh, I got to make sure people get paid. I got to make sure things get delivered. I mean, like that stress, how do you compensate for that with family, with work and all that other stuff,
Yeah. I mean, it's part of the deal, right? I think some of us can't not do it, right? Like it's a common thing too. I was just reading about that too, by the way. There's a great new book out by Cameron Herold titled Second in Command, about COO or president or that kind of like second in command role. And he mentions how like a common thing is for the CEO, now you hire a COO or second in command, and they took over a bunch of things that you don't particularly enjoy. And now you have all this free time. And a lot of CEOs get really like, they don't like that. It's like a little uncomfortable. And then they go around and start breaking shit just because they're bored, right? So I think part of it is that nature. I know for me, like a lot of the times, if I don't necessarily know what to do if I'm not like working on something, because it's my creative space. It's what I enjoy, like learning about things or building things or trying things or like, I create stuff. It's what I like to do. So I'm going to create something. Might as well create something that has value to other people, and that, that sometimes I'll make some paintings or some food or something, right? But like generally want to create something that has value to other people. It's more fun that way.
Powerful. So I want to ask you mentioned something last week. I think there was a pattern in a lot of your breakthroughs that you had. And I noticed that it seemed like every level that you had an unlocking, it was often inspired by like a coach or a mentor.
Oh yeah.
Like how do you feel about like, the importance of coaches and mentors, and have they been a key to your development and your thriving ability to evolve?
Oh, 1,000,000%. Yeah. Everything I've learned and every breakthrough I've had has been in some part influenced by other people, right? Maybe there's some original contribution. Of course, there's original contributions I made here or there along the way, but they will be on top of something that I learned from someone, or by applying something, or then adjusting it, or something like that. So it's like, yeah, everything is like from other people, and I'm like pretty obsessive about that. Right now, I'm going through probably like a 20-hour, if minimum, course on sales, everything sales, how to do the calls and setters and different phrases and how to get people on the calls, and there's less about how to build a sales team, but everything like involved in the call before and during and after. And I love it. It's fascinating. I'm not going to be the person who goes on these sales calls, but I really love knowing the nitty-gritty of those things, because then I can better understand what my team is doing and support them. I can obviously share what I'm learning with people, etc. And so anything from working one-on-one with various coaches, teachers, spiritual teachers, therapists, to courses and coaching programs and masterminds and peers, invaluable. In the beginning, I was kind of skeptical. I always had these stories about how they're probably out to cheat me. I had a lot of trust issues. So I was like, oh, they're probably there to just scam me or cheat me, or it's too much. Yeah, I had all these reasons and excuses for why not to do it, why not to hire someone. A big breakthrough for me was when I hired Gay Hendricks as a coach, $4,000 for 8 sessions, one-on-one sessions. So it's like $500 an hour. Dude, that's a steal for this guy. He doesn't do it anymore. But I'm so glad that I did that. It was incredible. And like now we're friends, right? He's going to write the foreword for my book coming out in May, called You Are the Product. I'm going to have Dan Martell. He said yes to write the afterword. So I was like, can we have 2 forewords? And like, all right, let's do a foreword and an afterword. But I think I'm so proud to have these people in my corner. They're 2 amazing people. And like from a strategic perspective, they speak to 2 different audiences. So I think that's super, super killer. Those are some of the payoffs that you don't necessarily think about, that comes from those coaching, investing, and building those relationships with people, right? Anne has a question. Can you talk about how you prioritize your time currency? Because it seems like you're all really present everywhere with all you're involved in. That's a great question. Do you want to come on, Anne?
Yeah, I mean, you seem like you're really involved everywhere that you're involved in, and you're really present. So, I mean, I just want it like even more than just like, how do you prioritize your time? But like really, our time is a valuable currency, and how to be putting it in the right places that it's really in alignment with what we want to be moving forward.
Yeah, it's hard. It's easy for me to be distracted by things that like, squirrels and things that I shouldn't. But it's also balanced, because a lot of times I get energy from things that are like right now, and I'm like, okay, like let's just knock it out. Let me do it. I'm inspired by that, but it might not be the most important thing I should be doing. But I've got energy on it, and I enjoy it, and like it needs to be done, or maybe it doesn't need to be. I could delegate it, but I'm really excited about it right now. Versus like the to-do list, the task list, like can sometimes be a lot more of a drag for me. What I do is, when I do well, and I don't always do that well, it's like, first of all is like controlling your calendar. So, who are you meeting with? And like today I have 10 meetings today. Yesterday I had 9 meetings, right? So a lot of the times my days will be filled up with a lot of meetings, so that kind of dictates it. Then it becomes a question of, do I have the right stuff in my calendar? And then with my chief of staff, Beth, we have these are the top priorities for the week or for the day, and that's what I try to focus on. I would say a lot of it also comes down to making sure that everything is operating without me. And then it's a matter of what I can do is, for example, when we had the thing about the bug that I mentioned before with like the cookies and domains with 2 letters and all that stuff, there wasn't like the team wasn't really figuring it out. And so I was like, okay, let's call a meeting, get everybody together, try to kind of help them talk to each other and brainstorm and put some urgency behind it. And then they were able to figure it out from there. So one of my mentors, Dan Martell, he said, like, as a CEO, the only real weapon that you have in your toolbox is meetings. So it's just like, who are you meeting with and what are you meeting about and how are you leading those meetings? That becomes a lot of it. And then try to have as little work that you personally have to do, like sitting down and doing. Of course, there's going to be some of that, but as little of that as possible.
So do you feel like your personal life has the same everywhereness like you have a good amount of time currency in that?
Yeah. So I don't have much of a personal life just because I don't care to at this point in my life. I mean, I make sure that I have time with my wife, but she's also extremely busy, right? She's like works hardcore a lot. So we make sure that we have time together, but it's definitely more quality time than quantity time. And then like when I look at my calendar, I'm like, okay, right now, like I could go out to dinner with a friend, which is important, but like right now, honestly, I would rather like do that thing and then like here and make sure that I set myself up for bedtime and get to bed early and then get up early and get my exercise and those things. So I tend to prioritize that. And then I'll be traveling. So tomorrow I'm flying to San Diego to meet with an old friend of mine, Glenn. Glenn has a mastermind called Flight Club. So I'll be visiting him for that. And then I'm going during the week, I'm going to Nashville for the SAS Academy and Boardroom. So I meet a lot of people there and that becomes a lot of my social life. That's what works for me right now. It's not a permanent thing, but for where I'm at in the company, I believe that there's so much opportunity in the market right now. There are some key hires that I need to make that I don't have, but I also need to sequence them right. And so right now it just makes sense to invest my time in that way. I enjoy the heck out of it. So, it's fun for me. So that's how I do it. People talk about like work-life balance and like you need to like all these things. I'm like, do what lights you up, right? Like, it's not like I'm aware that if I don't invest in friendships and all that stuff, then like it's, I'm gonna regret that one day. But I'll tell you this. So I'm making a lot of friends through these mastermind groups, which are more peer groups, right? Peer friends. So I moved to the States in 1999 and I lived here for 2.5 years. And then after that, moved back to Denmark. My girlfriend at the time and I, we decided we wanted to live here in the States for the rest of our lives. Like, it was like, this is home for us. This is where we're going to live. But kind of forced by visa situation. But then we're like, hey, we really want to solidify our friendships in Denmark right now while everybody doesn't have kids and we still have time to spend together so that they will last a lifetime. So even when we move across the world, we'll still have those friends. It was supposed to be a year, maybe 2. It ended up being 9 years. And I have very few of those friends left. So like that, like investing 9 years in Denmark, like it wasn't for that purpose for 9 years, but still like 9 years of like, so that we would have those friendships. And I'm like, I don't really have like, I have a few of them and those I would have had regardless, right? So it's like, that's a fallacy. I'm not too worried about that, honestly.
Yeah, I love what you're saying because it seems like about honoring, really, like truly honoring whatever season you're in your life, in your business, and embracing that.
Yeah. And I think there's so many stories about like what you should do and what it should look like. And like people have all kinds of opinions about it. But yeah, do what's right for you. And especially in the culture I come from, like, oh, like, don't you think you're working too hard and working too much or too ambitious or like, shouldn't you like slow down a little bit and be more like the rest of us? I'm like, fuck no.
Man, touch on that work-life balance thing. Like, do what lights you up?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Is there such thing as balance? I mean, do we do that?
The thing to me, I think work-life balance is completely bullshit. The way I think of it is, what am I here to do? What's my purpose? What's my mission? And as part of that, there's obviously a future there of a vision that we're creating, that we're holding ourselves to, or a future identity that we're stepping into. And I just want to caution that with, and we want to be like, being in purpose, being on purpose or on mission also means that my day-to-day is functioning. It has to be optimized, sustainable daily experience. But given that, that's my math. That's my logic of like, what is my path to being on purpose? That's the goal. If my purpose involves, drinking beer with my friends over soccer, then sure, go do that. But if my purpose is something else, then like stick with your freaking purpose and forget what everybody else says, right? Most people have no sense of purpose. They have no clue. So for God's sake, don't listen to them when it comes to how to invest your time. Like, don't listen to people whose lives you don't want, right? It's going to bring you a life that's like them. So that's my barometer. Not a work-life balance, but a sustainable life. But if I get energized by doing these things and I love it and I can't wait to get on with it every day, and I go to bed at night feeling fulfilled and happy and satisfied that where I'm at, then like go for it, right? The one thing I'll say is that I used to have this thing where I would get a little bit victim about not seeing more people day to day when I'm home here and when I'm kind of in that grind and not having more of a social life there. And it changed when I realized, no, this is actually what I want. Like, I could go out again and have dinner with people or whatnot, but I don't want to right now. I do want to start kind of a founders lunch, founders dinner kind of thing, where it's a very curated experience and it's a whole thing. And it also has both that personal goal of social life and friendships and all that, but it also has a business purpose and a business perspective. I do want to build that, but that's not what we're talking about here. So what I realized was that I was making myself miserable thinking that I should want something that I actually didn't want. And then I was like, fuck that, drop it. Yeah, I think that's it, guys. We're about to wrap, huh? I just want to mention, so Anne here, you're in Simplero Academy, and we love having you there. And I just wanted to mention to anybody who's here who's not currently in Simplero Academy that you could absolutely, definitely check that out. So we're building that to be a community of course creators, coaches, information entrepreneurs, giving coaching and content and training. And I'm talking to some really cool people right now about also bringing some of their training into the program that are just exactly what is needed for this type of business, for the kind of people that we are and that we serve. So it's a really, really, really great program. And Anne says, hits a home run on every note for what is needed with success. So I love that. That's exactly what we're aiming for. Yeah, so check out Simplero Academy. I'm really pumped about what we're building there, and it's so much fun. So check that out. All right, guys, that is it for today. I'll see you all next Thursday. That will be live from Nashville. Bye, everyone. See you next week.